We last learned about the cycle of the seasons. The cycle of the seasons is caused by Earth's revolution around the sun. How long does it take Earth to orbit or revolve around the sun? It takes 1 year. What causes the seasons? The seasons are caused by the tilt of the Earth as it moves around the sun. Today we are going to learn about another cycle in nature. This one is a little bit different. Today we are learning about the life cycle of a plant. Attracted. Attracted means made someone or something interested in someone or something else. The bright, colorful signs attracted customers to the bake sale. Emerge. Emerge means to come out into view. At the beginning of spring, bears emerge from their long winter hibernation. Reproduce. Reproduce means to make new animals or plants. Plants need pollen from other plants in order to reproduce or make seeds for new plants. Pollinators. Pollinators are animals that carry pollen to and from plants. Insects are perhaps our planet's most important pollinators. We need them so that we can have beautiful flowers and plants to eat. Protective. Protective means something that is intended to shelter or keep something or someone safe. An umbrella is a protective cover or shelter from the rain. Using bug spray to keep mosquitoes away is a protective measure you can take. Wearing a helmet when you ride your bike is protective. And wearing shin pads when you play soccer is also protective. Eating pizza or climbing a tree are not very protective. All living things pass through stages from birth to adult called a life cycle. For many living things, the cycle of life follows the 4 seasons of the year. For some living things, the cycle of life is short and is completed in just days, months, or a single year. For other living things, the cycle of life continues for many, many years. Some living things have longer lifespans than others. Some flies only live for a few days, but humans, like you, can live to be over 100 years old. Today, we will learn about the life cycle of a flowering plant. Just think about all of the flowering plants that you see in the parks, yards, gardens, fields, and meadows. Our world is awash with colorful, vibrant flowering plants. How do these plants grow and reproduce or make seeds for new plants? Today we'll find out. A flowering plant begins its life cycle as a seed. Seeds need special conditions to germinate or begin to grow. Spring provides seeds with the right conditions to grow. Therefore, the life cycle of a flowering plant begins in spring. In spring, there is more sunlight and temperatures are warmer. Seeds need just the right amount of light from the sun, nutrients from the soil, and water in order to grow. Once the seed germinates or sprouts, it grows and develops into a young plant with roots, a stem, and leaves. The first leaves unfold to allow photosynthesis to begin. Photosynthesis is the process by which plants make their own food, as well as oxygen. Plants use sunlight and water to make food in the form of glucose, a type of sugar. In the warmth of spring and summer, plants continue to grow. The younger plant is called a seedling. Gradually, a plant's stem will grow taller and true leaves will emerge. Once the plant matures or becomes an adult plant, flowers appear. In order for a flowering plant to reproduce by making seeds that will make new flowering plants, it must be pollinated. Pollination is when pollen from one flower mixes with the pollen of another flower so that the plant can make seeds. But how is pollen transferred from one place to another? In other words, How does pollination occur? Flowering plants need pollinators to help them with pollination. Pollinators are insects, birds, and other animals that are attracted to the shape, fragrance, or color of a flower. Without pollinators, most flowering plants would not produce seeds and fruit. Remember, plants need pollen from other plants in order to make seeds, and pollinators carry pollen from flower to flower. There are many types of pollinators, such as bird and small mammals, but insects are the #1 pollinators of flowering plants. The flowers of a flowering plant are designed to attract various pollinators, especially insects. The shape, fragrance, and color of the flower, as well as the sweet-tasting nectar contained within the flower itself, attract many different kinds of insects. As insects move from flower to flower, the sticky substance called pollen clings to their bodies and is transferred from flower to flower. Honeybees, bumblebees, ants, moths, beetles, and flies are just some of the insect pollinators. Honeybees are the most common pollinators. They carry out more pollination than any other insect. Some scientists think that bees are attracted to bright blue and violet-colored flowers, whereas butterflies like fragrant yellow, pink, red, and orange flowers. Butterflies also like wide petals so that they can settle on them while they drink the sweet nectar. Birds are important pollinators too, especially of wildflowers. For example, hummingbirds have perfectly designed beaks that can reach the nectar inside long, tubular-shaped flowers. There are more than 2,000 different kinds of birds in the world that feed on nectar. Birds have a poor sense of smell and help to pollinate unscented flowering plants because they are attracted by the color and shape of the flowers. A variety of small mammals pollinate flowering plants. Mice, shrews, and rats, even tree-dwelling animals such as lemurs and small monkeys, can help to transfer pollen. People also help the pollination process. Often when people are working in their flower gardens, the sticky pollen is accidentally carried from flower to flower. For some plants, pollination does not just occur during the daytime. Some scented flowers attract nighttime pollinators, such as bats and moths. Although 90% of the flowering plants are pollinated by animals, especially insects, the wind and even water can play a part too. Pollen is carried by the wind. Flowering plants that live in water, such as lilies, can be pollinated as the water carries the pollen from one plant to another. Once pollen has been transferred and reaches the new plant, the flower produces seeds. The next part of the process is called seed dispersal. This is the process of carrying the seeds away from the parent plant so that the flowering plant life cycle can begin all over again. Most seeds are dispersed or spread in the late summer and fall. Just like pollination, there are various ways that seeds can be dispersed or spread apart in different directions. Many flowering plant seeds are carried away from the parent plant by the wind. As the wind blows, the seeds are carried up into the air. Some flowering plants have pods or capsules that explode, sending forth a burst of tiny seeds into the air. Other flowering plants drop their seeds into rivers and streams, and the seeds are carried along to their new homes. Sometimes, animals carry seeds from place to place without even knowing it. Some seeds contained within a protective casing can attach themselves to the fur of passing animals. The protective casing will eventually fall off of the animal and rest in the soil, ready to begin the life cycle process. Some seeds are contained within a fruit that animals like to eat. Animals either spit the seeds out or they eat them, and the seeds reach the earth in the animal droppings that are left behind. Once on the ground, they rest in the soil until the germination process can begin again the following spring. All of this is happening around us in spring, summer, and early autumn. The potential for new life is being created as flowering plants are pollinated and seeds are dispersed. Across the world, the life cycle of flowering plants is renewed or happens again each year.
All right, my friends, as always, I have got some questions about what we learned about in our read aloud today. My first question is, which of the 4 seasons is the best for planting seeds? You've got it. The springtime is the best for planting because there is more sunlight and water to help feed the plants and help them grow. What is pollination? What does that mean? Pollination is when the pollen of one flower mixes with the pollen of another flower so that the plant can make seeds, which makes more plants. Why is pollination important to the life cycle of a plant? Right, we kind of answered that in our last question. Pollination is important in the life cycle of a plant because it allows plants to make new plants or new seeds that will grow into plants. How does pollination happen? There are a couple ways that pollination happens. The pollen has to be carried. The plant can't move the pollen by itself. Plants can't move. So the pollination is carried by humans or animals or sometimes wind to another flower. How do flowering plants attract pollinators? They use their color and their smell and shape to attract different pollinators, like bees, to carry their pollen to another flower. What about seed dispersal? What is seed dispersal, and why is it important to the life cycle of a plant? Seed dispersal is what happens when seeds from a plant are spread to other places, where they fall on the ground and then germinate. This is important because it allows the plant life cycle to continue and for new plants to grow. What are 3 ways that seeds are dispersed? See if you can name 3 ways that seeds are dispersed. They are dispersed by humans, by water, and by wind. All right, friends, last question for you. What might happen if there were no honeybees to pollinate the flowers? Turn to your neighbor or whoever is helping you today and ask and tell them what you think. What would happen if there were no pollinators like honeybees to pollinate flowers? When you are finished with your conversation, go ahead and open up the PDF that's attached to this assignment, and I will jump on my computer and show you what to do.
Okay, on this page, there are 2 pages on our assignment today. On this first one, we have some pictures of the different stages of the life cycle of a flowering plant. Your first job today is going to be to put those in the order that they happen in the cycle. Remember, when we'll do red so it's more noticeable, we start with the seeds. To make it easier on us, it's easy if we have a set starting point. We could start anywhere, but we're going to start with the seeds. That is the first step in the life cycle of a flowering plant. Your job is to decide what the second step, third step, fourth step, and fifth and final step are, and label them with a 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. That is the first part of your assignment today. For the second part of your assignment today, you are going to write one sentence about each stage. So if I write a sentence about our seeds, I could say, seeds are placed in soil. You're going to write one sentence that matches each stage of the life cycle of a flowering plant and explains a little bit about what is happening in that stage. Some words you might want to use when you're describing those stages are germination and sprout, seed dispersal, seedling, and adult flower. Decide what order those go in and then tell me about them. Give me one sentence about each. When you are done with this assignment, go ahead and turn it in. And you are all finished with knowledge today.